Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Voices of Verse Therapy. Today's extra special because I'm just joined by my co founder. So, seeing her on yet another video call. Together, we've been building Verse. We pivoted from a healthcare AI product called Hona before this, before we jumped into the speech therapy space. And it's been a pretty interesting story. We've known each other for a super long time. So, I thought it'd be great to dive into our journeys together so far. Danny also just has a super unique path, was really science oriented, former pre-med, and completely steered into startups in an industry. So I think it's just cool to hear from. And honestly, I feel like a lot of folks could be in a similar situation where they're towards the end of their undergrad and maybe they want to jump into something more like businessy. I know that's definitely what I did as well. So I think it's a unique story, but it's also something that could be pretty actionable for a lot of people out there. So, Danny, let's start with the beginning. Can you kind of share the story of how we started working together and how Verse came to life?
Yeah, of course. So I have to admit, I do love our origin story, excuse me. So Adam, we have known each other since middle school. We've had quite a bit of overlap in our friend groups in high school and then kept a bit in touch throughout college, right? Where our company started was about 2 years ago, actually around this time, when you were wrapping up your MBA in Chicago and I was visiting my parents for Thanksgiving. It was the World Cup, USA versus England, and a bunch of our mutual friends were going to watch the match at a bar, which is totally classic. I was actually going to bail on this day because I wasn't feeling too well, but then Adam, you actually texted me. I don't know if you know that. You texted me and you mentioned be there, and I didn't want to miss out on a chance to see you as it had been a while. So it's funny. We're sitting at this extremely packed bar, right? Like beer spilling all around us. Most people focused on the match, and there's you and me talking shop, discussing where we're at in our careers, what we want to do next, etc. And from that chat, basically came the idea that we wanted to work together, and we'd figure out a way how, basically. So we meet up again in SF. We start brainstorming, going through ideas, pretty quickly landing on the health tech space, given our backgrounds and hoping to kind of bring about a bit of change. Thinking about incorporating AI as things are and were very much moving in that direction. They then connect with our brilliant CTO Shuing, and we get to proper work on AI clinical summarization, the original HONA. Huge pain point we were trying to address. Got a lot of positive feedback. In fact, at the end of the day, we kind of felt entirely blocked. Health tech is tough in that you're dealing with a space that's notoriously resistant to change, that has extremely long sales cycles, and because of that, we couldn't really iterate as fast as we would have liked in order to build a better product. So it was that, and the fact that I never wanted to be like a nice to have product. I needed it to be needed, and that's very cheap trick of me, but that's kind of what my mentality was. We enter pivot hell, which I'd like to argue is certainly tough, but also a lot of fun because you get to talk very explicitly about the problems people are facing and you have everything to learn, right? At that point, it's a blank space and a blank slate. So, everything to learn at that point. We talk to a lot of people across a lot of different spaces, including health tech, biotech, regulatory applications. And it was actually learning about this particular business model and how it can be applied to something so meaningful as speech therapy that really shaped my conviction.
We can do a quick pause here. Are you hearing the?
The slacks, I'm sorry, they're coming in. Can
Is
I?
that Slack? All
Yeah,
right. Yeah. You want to just mute the app for a sec?
yeah. Do I just quit it? I actually don't know. I'll
Yeah,
just
you can
quit.
just quit it, or you can
Okay,
put your do not disturb on. Dope.
true.
Nice. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks. I've slacks in too, so I tried to like make a nice story out of it.
Yeah, and this will cut like most of those out, so we should be good. Cool. Let me maybe mush my M&Ms. All right. So when we first started talking about this, I actually would argue that you had to make a bigger change than I did. Even though I went into healthcare, it was software into software. You went from science into software. What excited you the most about making that kind of change, and why did you ultimately feel like you could do it?
Yeah, it's a good question. And honestly, I probably don't have the best answer for it because I don't think my story is actually too unique, right? Like, I grew up loving and being pretty good at math and science. And so my immigrant parents were like, perfect, you'll become a doctor. So on that path, I was pre-med. I studied neuroscience at USC. I'm very much thinking I was going to just kind of follow this very secure path. I still think it's awesome, medicine and the brain in particular. But I was finding kind of towards the end of college that perhaps the practice of medicine might not actually be the way that I want to change the world. And I know that's a little bit dramatic, but that's actually how I was thinking. So I actually applied to medical school. I didn't get in. And so I decided to go for my master's in biotech, like in chemical and biological engineering, to see how else I could try to make an impact in the field while still also leaving room for medicine if I want to try again. And so during grad school, I just kind of worked my butt off. I was in the Michael Jewett lab working and learning from very impressive people and frankly trying to keep up. And then one day I kind of got tapped on the shoulder to help spin a company out of some of that lab's work. And rather impulsively, still kind of maintain some of that impulsivity today. I was like, heck yeah, let's do it. And being a part of that startup really taught me a lot about myself, the way that I like to work, the way that I like to work with people. And man, did it make me fall in love with the grind. So my transition, so keeping it a little bit still within science, but now kind of applying that science in a different way, that kind of scientific method in a different way. And funnily enough, like medicine, I kind of thought pigeonholed me, which is ridiculous to say, I know, but I definitely felt like if you were to pursue something like with an entrepreneurship or in business in general, you kind of have a broader range of things that you can work on, you can focus on, you can wear a lot of hats if you don't want to, you can dig deep into one aspect of it. And so that's kind of what was exciting to me about it, and that it wasn't a perfectly paved path.
Yeah, now that you say it, I suppose it is a lot more scientific with software because you're basically just running small experiments over and over again and just trying to converge to some point. I mean, finding product market fit can be pretty similar to the scientific process.
And that's why you want to make sure your variables are set well, you're isolating variables, you're making sure you can understand the results that come in from it.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Nice. So I would love to know a little bit about your favorite part of just working in startups in general. Another piece of context was like you did startups before I did, so it was almost more you convincing me that this was like a viable and like good thing to do while I had maybe a more like cushy job at a really big company. So we know that there's challenges in this lifestyle that we're living. It's also super rewarding and really satisfying. So what's your favorite part about working in a startup, especially one like ours?
Yeah, yeah. For me, it's definitely the fact that it feels like I'm working on cool problems with my friends. It's just so fun. I don't think you can beat it. If you can find that anywhere in the workplace, especially if you're someone so dedicated to your work and like you want to contribute and make an impact, it's all about having it feel like you're working on cool problems with your friends. It does test you, right? Like it's challenging, it's draining, and it certainly can be mundane, but like working together towards this massive goal feels incredible. And like that's what I would want out of a professional, uh, whatever it's called, professional venture.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there's also, I will say, sorry to interrupt, Em, there's also something to say, I think, about it being all on you. Like, right, it can be terrifying, but it's very much the case that it's up to you and your tiny team if you succeed or fail. And so you can find motivation in that, you can be terrified for that, but like it'll push you forward.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think I've always tried to strive for more and more accountability. I really don't like having to like point the finger at other people. And one of the things I didn't enjoy about being in larger companies was that things felt pretty out of your control and there could be like a gossipy environment where you're like, oh, it's so and so's fault that we're in such and such situation. But at least right now, I'm not sure how long it'll remain this way, which is good. But you kind of just gotta look in the mirror if something goes wrong, which for some reason that's something that I just like always appreciate. Like maybe it's just like a complex of wanting to have control.
No, to be
Nice.
fair, Adam, actually, you taught me a lot about that, and you like made me rethink what accountability means for Verse, for myself and my personal life, right? Like you want to push towards goals in your personal life as well. So I actually appreciate how much you emphasize that because it has made an impact on your teammates as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate hearing that. Another thing that I've really liked about doing this is it opens your life up for more synchronicity. So there's really random people that you can come across that are just going to become a really big part of your life. And I just think there's something beautiful about that when it works out. So if you put yourself in these weird, semi extreme experiences where for us, it was like meeting hospital executives all over the country, literally like flying to different like
Alabama.
towns.
Alabama.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Yeah, you're in the middle of remote Alabama. I was in Aspen because I was a little bit better at negotiating my trips.
You had the nice. Yeah.
But just trying to like meet doctors, and I still have some of those relationships and value them. Obviously, all the people that we've met doing the speech therapy thing has been,
Really cool. And they're so fun to work with as well. It's been such a treat.
yeah, for sure. It's been way better than I even could have expected. It's a great group of people so far. Yeah, I mean, just opening yourself up to that is something that I think is pretty unique about taking some kind of entrepreneurial risk because you're really just like trying all this different stuff, and in the process of trying all this different stuff, you're going to meet all these different types of people, and a lot of them will stick and they'll kind of like be in your life and they can be helpful down the road, but it's also just like really rewarding to have new strong relationships with people. Yeah. So, what about a specific moment in time? Like, is there any experience or milestone? Maybe it's the Alabama trip that stands out so far. Like, what would that be?
So actually, I think I'd want to relate this more to verse, and I think it has to be when like those first few testimonials started coming in from both our providers and our clients, and kind of understanding the impact that verse is having on the people that we're trying to serve. Like, because we're not necessarily directly talking about like how things are going, and we're not necessarily seeing the treatment sessions or whatever to understand. Like, we have a little bit of a background view of it, but having people put into their words the impact that verse is having for them is incredible. The support they're feeling, the progress they're seeing, that's what it's all about for both providers and clients. I do want to emphasize that. Like, I'm really proud of us for making sure both sides are content with it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I would probably agree at this phase of the business. I'm sure there's things that are like more eventful, but that's definitely been the most rewarding.
Yeah.
You mean Shuing and Steph and everybody on the core team? I think we're good at the middle and the outside of therapy part. So building a community and a brand and hopefully good enough tech that makes the therapy like easy to do. But the actual therapist provider therapist client relationship, all we can do for that is just make sure that every SLP that we let into the network is awesome. And then from there, we just kind of try to get out of their way and enable them to do their job the best that they can. So it's just like really validating, I guess, that we've been bringing the right clinical people on board. So definitely been stoked about that. It makes you feel like you've made the right decision, that actual lives are being impacted by this. So
Totally. And I do think that's what kind of sets Verse apart from the rest, right? You mentioned community. I do want to say it's the community that we're establishing for our providers, with our providers. The Verse providers, right, are always discussing, collaborating, helping each other out, which is awesome to see from our point of view. And we know, right, that the best care is given when our providers feel supported. And so that impact is definitely felt by our clients.
yeah, I don't know. It's like peanut butter and jelly. We do different things, but it's all going towards the same.
Exactly.
Hopefully, the sum's greater. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So tell me about some lessons that you've learned as we've been doing this. So we've been doing this for maybe a year and a half, 2 years, and then we pivoted to Verse only like three. We've been operating for about 3 months. So that's TLDR story where we're at in the startup game so far. So it's been a huge experience for both of us. What would you say has been the most valuable lesson that you've learned since we've started?
Yeah, it's biased towards action, like for sure, hands down. Sometimes my perfectionism that I grew up having and still continue to have, those tendencies still creep out. But I do think it's almost imperative for people in startups to bias towards action over thinking and mulling over things, especially things that aren't terribly consequential, right? Like, think it's wrong, it very well might be, but push it, submit it, send it, whatever. On the off chance that you get it right on the first attempt, you've saved yourself and your startup so much time and you've pushed it further much more quickly. And if it's wrong, you find out and you probably spend the same amount of time fixing it than you would have figuring it out perfectly the first time. So I definitely think it's biased toward Jackson. Just kind of get it out there.
Yeah, definitely. And for what we're doing right now, part of it is making it so that our SLPs can work with and take insurance a lot better. And that is a really weird and difficult thing to figure out. And There's a lot of reading that went into it, and a lot of prep, and we luckily have friends that have done something similar. But I think most of the takeaways have just been because we've tried to work with insurance like all over the country and just kind of saw where it was actually doable.
Yeah, and I'm kind of going through this all like as we get online with Medicare. Medicare is a national program, right? But each state handles it a little bit differently. And so they all have these different forms you have to make sure you have ready to be able to take clients that are on Medicare. And like a lot of it is just like, maybe I don't know exactly the answer that they're looking for, but I'll try to submit it. And if it comes back, I need to fix it. Fair enough. But if it goes through and it gets us that much closer to taking Medicare clients, I am happy.
100%, 100%. Um, and then do you have like any upcoming goals or ideas that you're really looking forward to diving into, or like parts of the company that you really want to push forward in the near future?
Yeah, so Adam, as you know, we are very much in a growth mindset right now. So you're already seeing Verse become a network of major insurance providers. We're planning and hoping to expand that. You'll see our providers more regularly working with folks in person. Definitely want to enable that, make that more readily available to clients as they seek speech therapy out. You'll be seeing our flyers in your local doctor's offices. We're really trying to help support our providers in marketing themselves and getting their names out there. So really, I'm just like excited to make this care even more accessible. I'm definitely looking forward to working more closely engaging with early intervention programs. As you know, they see long wait lists. They have a lot of kiddos, so I'm looking forward to serve those populations as well.
So you're just making forward to making us more of a, you're looking forward to making us more of a thing just everywhere that therapy happens.
Exactly, exactly. There are a lot of different avenues that we can go down to try to connect people with therapists. It's a matter of like which populations we feel we should address first. Yeah, there I frankly want to bring support where it's needed, and I want first to be able to enable that.
Nice. And you talked about this a lot, but in your eyes, what do you think makes us unique?
Yeah, I do think support is how you win here. So on top of like the community that we're building for our providers that they're participating in, that they're creating themselves, shaping themselves. I do think it's really important that we make sure our providers feel supported in their practice, our clients feel supported in their treatment. Basically, maintaining this accessible, high quality care and support is core to our mission, and that's what I think will set us apart and does set us apart.
Yeah, I think we give providers the freedom to practice the way they want to practice, and we support them no matter how they try to do it.
Right.
And then it's our job to let the client know up front what that's going to be like. So we can be like the best marketplace or like the best matching algorithm for a client to the perfect like SLP for them. So it's like we almost look at the SLPs and how they practice as fixed. And then we're just trying to plug the clients to the right one, as opposed to taking all these SLPs and squeezing them into being like a different type of SLP than they actually are to meet the client, if that makes sense.
A lot of it is right is allowing them to kind of flourish in their own areas of expertise,
Right.
and they'll get a lot more satisfaction out of their practice that way. And so we want to make sure that that flexibility holds true for them.
Yeah, and if your SLP is stoked, then hopefully that makes your
Yeah,
go a lot better. It's just better for
exactly. That's what it is, right? They feel supported, the client feels that.
totally. So let's pivot back to your life a little bit. I would love to hear, since you've navigated this like very unique career path from pre-med to science to startups to tech startups or like software specific startups, what advice would you give to anybody leaving that traditional path for something more unconventional?
Yeah, I do think it takes a certain type of personality to go after something more unconventional. And I'm like learning every day whether I have that personality or not. I also think it takes a great amount of privilege, which I'd like to acknowledge. I think the advice I'd give is frankly, and this is going to sound silly, but like frankly, do what you want. But I mean that in a very literal way, in that you have to understand very deeply what it is that you want and go after that. Otherwise, you'll be left unsatisfied. Like with Verse, for example, I know it's exactly what I want to do. So never have I second guessed my decision to commit to it. Never have I thought, what if? Like I know there's nothing at this point that I'd rather be doing than building out this company. And so like you need to basically like be confident in that so that you can give put your best foot forward for it.
Yeah, definitely feel similarly. When you're saying like I don't know if I have like the startup makeup, I feel like you definitely do. But one thing when I look at like how you've evolved over the time that we've been doing this and our pivot, like post verse, it seems like the three of us, shooting the third co-founders on the call, are all like slotted into our own little worlds, but it's actually what we're like way better at, which has probably been the most energizing part of this. So when it's like second guessing your startup skills, I had like the same thing as you, just coming from a different angle because we were basically both doing enterprise sales.
Yeah.
And I like really like consumer stuff and building brands. And you are like much better at making like a giant machine just run well. And enterprise sales is like not really either of those things. So I feel like there is a little bit of like frustration of like why can't we get this to go, and like there's like all the burnout symptoms associated with that, and you just like question if you're great. But I feel like when you're pursuing a startup, you can, by being in the right field, like find something that just fits your vibe and makes you flourish a lot better, which I think happened to both of us. I would like to think. I think it happened to Shooting too. Like she got to do actual full stack engineering. I don't know. There's something about just like choosing the right field for you, and everybody says like there's such an advantage in working in somewhere that you've worked before in startups. Like if you've been an accountant forever, there might be some esoteric thing that you know, where you can make like this little piece of accounting software that ends up being a game changer because you're the only one who knows the problem so well. But I think the other piece of it is more just the way that you work. Like if you're a yapper, you might want to do something that's like much more salesy, or if you're someone who's super creative, do something that has like this huge component where like if design is great, you're gonna win. Like you can pick verticals that I guess energize you because you have unlimited options on what you're gonna work on with the startup.
Yeah, totally. I think you nailed it. I think being able to kind of find our niche within verse was definitely very motivating and energizing for like the company entirely. I do think like we ought to play to our strengths and we should like, right, there's one thing about like overcome your weaknesses, whatever, but like in this kind of situation, I do think it's best to play to your strengths. So again, like the name of the game is to move quickly. And how do you do that is by putting the best people at the best part of the job for them.
Yeah, it's such a weird psychological thing because I feel like on paper both of us might look like we could solve problems or be like smart, but there's still maybe an ego or something that when things are hard, you're just like, we're gonna grit through it. I think this second time around, post pivot and like actually seeing numbers go down on the board, my mentality is just like, well, why is it hard? Like, why are we doing the hard thing?
Yeah.
There's like mundane, grindy things that lead to progress, but then there's other things where you're just like hitting your head on the wall almost for the sake of it. And I think this second time around, because I guess this is technically our second startup, we've just really not wasted times on things that are
Yeah,
actually important.
right. We have less tolerance for that. And I think that's the way to go, right? If there's another path that can help push us forward, we take it. And if we have to veer back a little bit, that's the case, but like it's forward. That's what the goal is.
For sure, for sure. So looking back on your journey, you already talked about what you would tell someone in a similar situation, but how about just actually yourself? Like what's one piece of advice you'd give yourself on day one of this?
Yeah, I think um this is like a mantra that very much try to live by, as ridiculous as it sounds, but it's moderation is for cowards. There's a quote in the movie Lone Survivor. Not that it has any more significance to me than I just appreciated the sentiment that comes from it, but it's like moderation is for cowards. Anything worth doing is worth overdoing. And I'm kind of kidding, but I do try to approach the things that can be approached like that with that in mind. Like, don't aim for 100, aim for 1,000. Don't do it 2 times, do it 7 times to ensure it's like perfect. Like these things that are just like, why kind of let yourself converge towards mediocrity when you can make it the best and be the best. So that's kind of the mentality that I try to frame things with.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm in Southern Illinois for an ultra marathon, so it resonates for sure.
Yeah, there you go.
Probably a good segue to your personal goals. So, away from the company, what are
Yeah.
some personal goals or like passions that you've been focusing on, and how are you finding balance, if any, between the startup life and your personal growth outside of
Yeah,
first?
nice qualification there. So a few things I'm working on trying to get better at. I'm learning a new language, German, which is very important to me. I'm also trying to get better at tennis to the point where I'm no longer embarrassed to play in front of people. So still working on that. And honestly, like you mentioned, not too sure about balance for better or for worse. I very much see my startup like as part of my personal life because I want it to be, and I put a lot of myself into it. I think what makes it so fun as well, like just the big part of me that's in it. As far as trying to maintain that, I'm an early riser, so kind of 5 a.m. wake ups also do seem to allow you to have more time and do more with your time. So that's been helping, making sure I keep all of this in check.
For sure. I was thinking about this the other day with the work life balance part, and I definitely think I have enough balance right now. Like, I don't feel like I'm yearning for anything. I think when you like what you're working on, the need to balance it out just kind of goes away. It's all
Yeah,
just
right. It's like it's all one. There's no balancing. Like it just becomes one. And I'm
totally.
perfectly happy with that. Like I like that, in fact.
This other framing that I've been thinking about, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I actually think 20 like 26 years old to maybe like 33 years old, if you don't have a family, is one of the it's like limbo of like your life.
Yeah.
So the things that I'm missing out on aren't as exciting as they used to be. And I don't have some kid where I'm like super guilt tripped about spending time on this as opposed to them. So just like at this phase of life, like what else are we really doing?
Yeah. Right. Like there's no kind of like concept of FOMO with me much, right? Like because I mean we're fairly flexible. We get to see our friends and family when we want, and we've built like our workplace being able to tolerate that. So I'm very grateful for that. But at the end of the day, like this is like where I want my energy to be, right? There are like only a few things that matter to me in life at this point. Like verse certainly does, my partner, my family, making sure that I'm like healthy otherwise. But like really that's it.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's super simple. Maybe the whole company is just like one really big quarter or third life crisis. No, just kidding.
Whatever
Yeah,
the
I
opposite crisis is, actually, that's what we should say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, it's like if you could, maybe this is sad. I don't think it is because I've been like really, really stoked at this phase. But if I were to trade out any set of years to just like invest in something that could hopefully be really big later in life, it would actually be right now. Like, I feel like you have all your school years where you're basically like figuring out what the world is. And then once you figure out what the world is and you have like a little bit of footing, and maybe if you're fortunate enough to have a little bit of means, you just start like exploring, having fun in the big city, like getting all that out of you, going out a lot, dating, like yada yada. And then you have the phase of the family or, just like settling down in general if the family's not your jam. And then there's just this like little tweener phase where really like you don't even have, at least for me, most of my social life is just like weddings, which are just all kind of obligatory. I don't like go out much for myself anymore.
Yeah.
And even if I did, there's not even that many friends around because they're all at their other weddings. So it's just like this really weird limbo tweener phase. And I feel like it's a perfect time to just grind.
On a break, and it's like it's during this time you call it tweener, but it also like I'm probably the most confident I've ever been like in myself and my like professionally and personally. So like having kind of like what we because you have quite an extensive background and impressive background at that. So like being able to apply that to what you're doing now, like we should feel on top of the world. Like, we have still some of that like naivete that we have just like from being relatively young, but also like the confidence in ourselves and how we performed previously to back us up and like that just it's a good machine. It's a good
And
machine.
energy too.
And
I think
energy.
there's
Yeah, totally. That
tons
does help, right?
yeah. Yeah, we can get kind of punched in the face a lot right now and just keep going.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for doing this. It's been awesome. A little bit different than interviewing an SLP, but I had a lot of fun doing it. So, wild ride so far. Excited to just keep chugging along. And to everybody listening, all of you, thanks for joining us at Voices of Verse. And stay tuned for more conversations of all things speech therapy. I might get our other co founder involved a little bit, and then try to highlight more and more clinicians and the practices that they're running. But thank you so much. And again, Danny, really appreciated you sitting down with me today.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun to reflect on this with you.
Sweet.